ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. What are these weird terms and how do they affect my photos? Hey, it's Wilson, and today I'm going to do a basic breakdown of each of these settings to help you get started in taking better photos. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at ISO. The lower the ISO, the better the image quality. However, the lower the ISO, the less light the camera lets in. Can you see how the image at ISO 100 looks super clean, while the image at 12,800 ISO looks rather grainy? Generally, a low ISO is used when it's bright out, and a higher ISO is used when it's darker. For most modern cameras, I wouldn't go past 6400 ISO, as the image quality degrades too much past that point, unless of course, you have a really high-end camera. Now let's look at shutter speed. Shutter speed is used to freeze motion. The higher the shutter speed, the faster the motion that you will freeze. The higher the shutter speed, the less light the camera lets in. The lower the shutter speed, the more light the camera lets in. Therefore, a higher shutter speed is generally used when it's bright, and a lower shutter speed is used when it's dark. Finally, we have aperture, or also known as f-stop. Your aperture determines your depth of field, which is basically how much of your image that's going to be in focus. In other words, your f-stop is one of the key determining factors in how blurry your backgrounds will be in your images. The lower the number, like f1.8, the blurrier the background will be, whereas the higher the number, the more of the image will be in focus. Like shutter speed from before, the higher the f number, the less light your lens will let in. The lower the f number, the more light your lens will let in. These three settings will come into play in determining how your photos will look and be exposed. Let's say you have a perfect exposure at f1.4, ISO 800, and the shutter speed is 1/150th, and you're trying to take a picture of your dog, but your dog looks blurry in photos because she just won't sit still. In that case, you increase the shutter speed to 1/160th. Now your dog looks nice and sharp, but the photo is too dark. To compensate for this, you will either have to adjust your f-stop or your ISO. Since you're using a lens with a base aperture of f1.4, that means your f-stop can't get any lower to let in more light, so your only choice will be having to raise the ISO. Since you've more than doubled your shutter speed from 1/50th, you will need to more than double your ISO from 800 to 2500. A shutter speed of 1/160th lets in 3 times less light as 1/50th, so to compensate, you'll have to raise your ISO an equal amount from 800 to 2500 to let in more light and to match your previous exposure. That's a super basic breakdown of each of the 3 main camera settings. I'm going to make a separate video for each one, going into the nitty-gritty details of each setting. If there's one setting that you'd like me to cover first, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.